Good evening, everyone. I'm Billy. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome. Monday night after the General Service Conference. Hopefully all the delegates are getting some rest and had a good week. Few reminders. We'll go through Tradition 7 and Concept 7 tonight. When we get to questions, we're still going to stay away from any conference items. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever, it's bad timing because we're going over Concept 7 tonight, which is the legal and the spiritual and where they meet. And apparently, from two delegates that I talked to, there was a floor action to censure the General Service Board that failed last week. I do not know the details. So I will be talking about that topic in general, not about what happened, because I was not there. So I can just talk about Concept 7 and, the implications there. But again, let's try to stay away from any conference topics. This is being recorded. Please keep your phone down away from the screen so it doesn't look like you're taking pictures of anyone in the meeting. A Google Drive will be posted in the chat. That's an easy way to get the recordings. They're also in the Monday night service workshop private group. If you email me and you want to get in that group or message me on Facebook, you can. The recordings are usually posted by late Monday night, early Thursday, early Tuesday at the latest. So let's go to Tradition 7. The AA groups themselves ought to be fully self-supported by the voluntary contributions of their own members. We think that each group should soon achieve this ideal, that any public solicitation of funds using the name of Alcoholics Anonymous is highly dangerous, whether by groups, hospitals, clubs, or other outside agencies, that the acceptance of large gifts from any source or of contributions carrying any obligation whatever is unwise. Then, too, we view with much concern those AA treasuries which continue beyond prudent reserve to accumulate funds for no stated AA purpose. Experience has often warned us that nothing can so surely destroy our spiritual heritage as futile disputes over property, money, and authority. So we'll go through it slowly, but from the start, let's just say that alcoholics and Alcoholics Anonymous in general, having no money is a problem, and having too much money is a bigger problem. So that makes us a weird organization right from the start. But it says right from the opening line, the AA groups themselves ought to be fully self-supported by the voluntary contributions of their own members, and there with a THEIR, not with a THRERE. So does that mean that you can't take money from other AA members in your group? Of course not. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is any money from non-group members should be like gravy. And I mean non-group AA members. We don't take outside contributions or donations, I should call them, from anybody. And there is a big difference between contribution and donation. The two words mean entirely different things. When you make a donation, you're giving it to some charity to do work that you don't do, that you might not even be somehow attached to. Contribution, you could contribute more than money. You could contribute your time. Contribution has a much bigger definition. The other thing is that I don't know about anyone else here, but I had to file my taxes not too many weeks ago. On a year when it says that I owe, I do not donate to the United States government, to the Internal Revenue Service. They are not on my list of donors. They're not a charity that I support. I contribute because I'm a contributing member of society today. I have a mortgage with a bank. That bank is not on my list of charities either. I contribute because I pay my own way. Now, the animal shelter down the street, the homeless organization in my county, a couple of other things, those I donate to. I could even give you some AA examples. And the amount of money doesn't matter. And so you all should know this. But for a long time now, even when I only gave, like, when electronic banking first started, I think I first started with like maybe $2 a paycheck or $3 a month or whatever. But I send money to the New York Intergroup office. I contribute. I contribute to the Chicago area service office every month. I lived there for a long time and served as a delegate there. I contribute to the Deaf Intergroup in Texas. Now, I also every month have been sending money to Dr. Bob's house and Stepping Stones, but I donate to them. I do not contribute to them. They are not AA entities. Those are great purposes. I believe great organizations with a great mission, but they're not AA. So I donate to them. Now, I believe that this is one thing where the pandemic and electronic contributions have helped us. It's kind of easy to just send once or twice a month with an electronic contribution to your home group. Um, we of course have this challenge of a dollar in the basket has become like standard for many years, and so people repeat what they see. You know, do you think I have never seen in any AA parking lot? Okay, I'm just going to tell you, maybe there is one out there, and if there's one out there, I'd love someone to text me a picture. But I have never seen in even a clubhouse parking lot any sign that says, you may use your car keys to save a seat once you're inside and then go outside and vape and smoke or BS, whatever you want to do. I've never seen that sign, but yet somehow everybody knows that keys are a magic sign to save someone's seat. Although I believe saving seats is killing people, but I'm okay, I guess, with saving your own seat. Saving a whole row, a little bit too much. But my example is newcomers learn by what they see and what they hear. So while there's no sign in the parking lot, it doesn't take long in AA to realize, oh, wow, all the people that are outside vaping, they all have their car keys on the chairs. You learn that once because you're outside doing whatever, and you don't have a seat when you go in where you want to sit. And then you're like, wow, all these other people had a seat. And what's it take? Maybe 2 or 3 weeks to catch on. And you're like, oh, I saved seats with my keys. Um, Same with a newcomer seeing what you put in the basket. Now, I'm not saying anyone should judge what anyone puts in a basket, but if all you see repetitively is people putting money in the basket, it's going to teach a lesson. Now, I believe the tradition says we support our home groups more than we support other meetings we attend. That's what it says to me, that my first responsibility is my home group, and it suggests that I have one home group. So that's the one that I support. Do I put money in other baskets? Yes. But that's kind of like being a good guest. That's kind of like helping doing dishes. That's kind of like my dad or my mom bringing a gift to the house we're going to visit. Like, it's just being a decent person. It's the home group members who are responsible. And, there's a couple of things I would suggest people do. And that is, number one, if you haven't done it in a long time, for a month, track what AA baskets, whether virtual or in person, you're putting money in for a month, and track how much and what basket it's going in. It doesn't matter the amount, even if it's zero. But at the end of the month, add up how much money you put in AA baskets total, and then add up how much went into your home group and how much went to other meetings you happen to attend. And take a look at that and see if it works out for you. It's not for me to tell you what it should look like, but I know when I first did it, it didn't work out for me. I know when I miss my home group now, when I go back, I throw extra money in because it's not based on how many times I attend my home group. If I'm traveling on business or something, it's based on that I'm a member and that I should pay my fair share every month and every year. Not taking outside money has kept AA out of so much trouble. And there's a couple of lines in here that are really important. It says, I love this. Then, too, we should view with much concern AA treasuries, which continue beyond prudent reserve to accumulate funds for no stated AA purpose. Like, is all the money that you have in your group's bank account for a stated AA purpose? Has your group figured out what your prudent reserves should be? The General Service Board has 9 to 12 months. The General Service Board has a plan. If the General Service Board, they call it the reserve fund. It's a prudent reserve, though. If it goes over 12 months for longer than a year, the Finance Committee has to come up with a plan to lower it. That has happened in the past. If you look specifically at years 2002 and 2003 for AA World Services, you will see that they lost money both those years. And that was a plan to lose money because the reserve fund was over. The reserve fund was so over in 2002 and 2003 that's when the fourth edition Big Book came out. And the fourth edition first printing was $1 cheaper retail than the last printing of the third edition. Like, that's how serious we take not having too much money. I posted in the Monday night private Facebook group a great article written by Gary Glenn. I use his last name because he was a Class A trustee. He served as the treasurer of the General Service Board and then the chair of the General Service Board. He gave a presentation in the mid-90s about spiritual poverty, and it's one of the best that I've ever seen or ever heard. So this whole money thing, and recently I received a question, and your group has to decide what expenses make you self-supporting. I would strongly suggest that funding your GSR to be a fully participating GSR is just as important as the rent, just as important if you pay insurance, just as important of any other bill. That whoever serves as GSR, it should not matter what their economic condition is. It should just matter, can they carry out the duties? In my particular area, it costs us about $1,500 a year to have a GSR. That's 4 quarterly weekends, 1 or 2 nights in a hotel each weekend, meals for the weekend, and usually a couple 100 miles there and back of gas money. So it winds up costing us 400 or 500, for each quarterly assembly. A trend has developed, and anyone who knows me knows that I can't stand it. But someone asked me a good question lately about why I can't stand it, or comparing it to the General Service Conference. So the question was, there are a lot of districts and groups that have started using group contributions to help groups who can't afford to have a GSR send their GSR to an assembly. And I think that goes against the traditions. Obviously, a group is not self-supporting. Now, what has been brought up to me, which is a valid point, is that, well, the General Service Conference tells each area what the total cost is, about $9,000, give or take a couple $100 per delegate, per voting member. They send a minimum out for each area. Many areas send the minimum out. It's whatever, $2,000 or $3,000, whatever it is now. But any area that doesn't even send the minimum still gets to go. And so aren't other areas funding that? Well, maybe. But their groups are giving money to the General Service Board. That's number one. But number two is this. The General Service Conference at least has a check and balance on how out of hand it could get with delegates. There's 93 delegates right now. Up until 1999, 2000, there were 92. Up until 1990, there was 91. We split Washington into Eastern Washington and Western Washington. And we split Area 5 about 10 years later, which was one of the Los Angeles areas, into Area 5 and Area 93. But that had to happen with the approval of the General Service Conference. The General Service Conference gets to decide if another area can be created. So they have at least a way to cap the expense. There is no check and balance on new groups, as we all know. In fact, the fact that we have no check and balance has kind of led us to this overpopulation of everyone starting groups and meetings. And the area has no control over that, nor does the district. The new delegate is alerted. I mean, the current delegate is alerted that a new group has started, but they aren't given any powers of investigation. They can check when the group meets. Is the day right? Is the time right? Is it an AA group? But there's no meeting purification committee. There's no meeting quota committee. No DCM or district chair can come in and say, you know what, we already have 6 groups in that zip code. We don't need a 7th. We don't have that control. So funding other groups who can't pay for their GSR, I would say this. What is the difference between that and your group paying another group's rent? What's the difference? There's really no difference. It's a valid cost that the group has to pay. So we definitely see that out there. There's another line in the long form that I love, and this sometimes hurts people's feelings. So I apologize ahead of time if anyone here is in this position. But it says, let's see. That acceptance of large gifts from any source or of contributions carrying any obligation is unwise. So I'll take the second part first, obligations. You can't send a check to the General Service Board and say, I want this to be for corrections, or I want this to be for treatment. We don't take earmarked funds. Now, a lot of areas or districts might have what some people call a pink can for corrections literature. But there's a high responsibility on nonprofits that take segregated money. Sometimes in AA, we think the rules don't apply to us, but they do. If somebody gives you money to do a certain task and you accept it, you've made a promise to them. Now, if you're a group and not a legal entity, not a big deal. But if you're a 501c3, it is a big deal. Many universities have been given money by families and forgot to use the money for what it was given for and have had to return the money. Like a family gave the money to build a science building and instead the university built a music building. And 6 years later, the family figured it out. No, that money has to come back. That's why the General Service Board does not take earmarked funds. Just all goes into general fund. And no obligations. That's why we don't take a lot of money. 7,500's the max we take right now. I don't know what the conference decided last week. But going into last week's conference, it was 7,500 a year. Any individual can send. That's so that when you get off the elevator at the General Service Office, which I know a bunch of you have been to, and anyone who hasn't, I hope that you get there. But what you do see when you get off the elevator is the Serenity Prayer in a lot of different languages on the wall. That's what you see, thank God. What you don't see is what you see in a lot of nonprofit buildings. Someone's name, like that they're a platinum or gold donor, and they gave this much money. We don't do any of that nonsense. We do not give credit to individuals, and we never want to be dependent on only the rich. It makes AA very different. And when I say AA, other 12-step fellowships have followed us, but we were the first. So it makes us very different than other people or other organizations. The other thing it says, and this is the one where I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I'm just going to tell you what it says. Large gifts from any source. This is covered in the AA group pamphlet in the section on the treasurer. So what does this mean? This means if you own a pizza parlor, you don't get to give 20 pies for the group anniversary night unless you're getting paid. That's it. This means if you own a deli or a bakery, we don't need any newcomer thinking that you have some special status because you give a lot. And it comes right out of the tradition. That's what it says. The other thing I want to talk about the seventh tradition, especially because a lot of people in service, is let's just say you're the corrections chair. The corrections chair needs a budget, whether you're at a district or an area. The way that most area or district treasurers figure out the budget for next year is they look at what we spent this year and the year before. And they come up with an average, and maybe they add 2 or 3% for inflation, whatever they do. And they say, this is the budget for next year. But let's say you happen to be a corrections chair who took over for a corrections chair who might be wealthy. And they didn't hand in any receipts for anything. And they didn't hand in any mileage reimbursement. So what does that do to the treasurer? It messes up their numbers planning for the next year. It is as much a violation of the seventh tradition to not help the area or district be fully self-supporting as it is to put no money in the basket. If you are one of those people who are lucky enough to be in that situation, and there are people that feel it, you know what, AA's given me this life, I don't need to hand in a receipt for $4. But here's the deal. That's kind of an arrogant way to look at it. Because the person next year, $4 might be $4 million to them. That might be the difference between them being able to do service and not do service. So if you're one of the lucky people in that situation, hand in your receipts, get paid, cash the check, and throw it in an AA basket if you don't need it. It's very simple. That way the books stay good. That way you feel in your own mind like you're not taking money from AA because you've been taken care of by AA and your life is good. That keeps everything level. Because it is super important that AA membership and doing service never depend on money or conformity, as the first tradition state. It's super important that everybody gets an equal chance to serve and to do service. The other thing I want to say about the seventh tradition, groups have a lot of leeway here. I just want to grab my book. Hold on. I'm not here to be the arbiter about what your group does with its money. A lot of times we only talk about putting money in the basket for the seventh tradition. We forget to talk about the real responsibility of taking money out of the basket and spending it. There is definitely a spiritual agreement when you are spending AA money. Now, I believe in truth in advertising. If a basket goes around, I believe the money I'm putting in a basket is for an AA purpose. If a group has a group anniversary or something else, maybe they should pass a separate basket for that and let people know that that money is not going to help carry the message. It's going to have a big picnic. Or if you do just put it all in one basket, announce that as part of your seventh tradition. Baskets are going around. We pay all our group expenses. And we also pay for our group anniversary out of that basket. But let people know. How you spend your group money is really your group's business. I will say this. Whenever there's a place where money and affiliation kind of cross with each other, and I'll give you an example. Where you meet could be a community center, could be a temple, could be a church. They come to you and say, you know what? We could really use you having a cleanup day of our parking lot once a month. Or how about you paint our fence? Or how about you clean out our gutters? I would tell you that's a slippery slope to go down. The best response for that is, how about we just pay a fair rent and you pay somebody to do that? That's the much better response. I also want to say that when I say that, I want to clarify something, because God knows I say anything and it gets taken out of context. And by the time it gets back to me, I'm like, I need to listen to that recording. Either I said that coming out of a bar like 40 years ago, or I don't remember saying that. Like, let's talk about a person who might be the janitor at the church, or might be the caretaker of the property where you meet. If that person gets paid by the church or whoever, is also very good to your group, and your group decides to give them an extra 20 or 40 bucks around holiday time, that is none of my business. That's your business. And if your group thinks that's the right thing to do, I can't find anything in the literature that would say don't do that. I think in relation to its own affairs, as Tradition 4 says, your own affairs are where you meet. But when it comes to painting and putting roofs on and all this other stuff, it's much better to just pay a fair rent. Now, some people say, we meet in a building and they don't want to charge us any rent. And some people say, oh, that's not self-supporting. Not necessarily. The question you need to ask then is, what do they charge other groups? If they let other community groups meet there for free, then AA is not getting anything for free that anyone else doesn't get for free. If they offer you a discount, you need to make sure that everyone gets the discount, not just AA. there's a real place here to be common sense and practical and not like draw rigid lines. But if they let the American Red Cross and the local first aid company and the Girl Scouts meet there for free and they don't want to take your money, well, then I don't see anything wrong with it. However, if you're getting something just because you're Alcoholics Anonymous, that's a problem. And that's what the General Service Board uses. I'm sure there's a lot of people here who've been to a lot of AA conventions. There's probably some people here who've been on the committee of AA conventions. The going rate in America is basically for every 50 or 40 rooms you rent, you get one comp night. Not because you're AA, because every organization does that. It's simple business. We don't just give money away because we're AA. We have to cut the best deal for Alcoholics Anonymous and our members. We just don't take special deals because we're AA. Let me just see if there are any questions so far. When others, especially newcomers, don't see you putting money in the basket because you used an electronic method to make your contribution, how do we let them know that we are doing? And then who wrote the spiritual poverty piece? Gary Glenn wrote the spiritual poverty piece. So that's a great question, and I've thought about this. A lot of groups that send around baskets now will have inside the basket a laminated piece of paper with a QR code on it, so that people even right there could go to their phone and send Venmo or Cash App or PayPal or whatever you use. I would also suggest that when you pass the basket, you make an announcement. A lot of group members give to the group via electronic method so that people know that. That's what I would say. What drives me crazy is another GSO produced film of a meeting that shows someone putting $1 in the basket, right? I mean, that drives me crazy. It drove me crazy when I was a trustee. Like, and they key in the camera right on the basket and the person putting $1 in. I'll say this too, and I'll just throw this out there. For most people, when they come into Alcoholics Anonymous, they're not coming on a winning streak in a lot of parts of their life. Emotional, financial, mental, family, domestic, marriage, God knows. All of them, a few of them. Very few people here come here on a winning streak. So there's a good chance that when you came here, putting a quarter in might have been a lot some days. Putting $1 in might have been a lot. And I hate that saying, we need you more than your money. No, we need both. That's how we observe the seventh tradition. We just don't need your money if you don't have any. But if you have money, we need it. And I would say this. If you've been lucky enough to stay sober a couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you might want to compare what you're putting in a basket now to what you put in a basket when you first came in your first year or two. You might want to take a hard look at what your income was when you first got here compared to now. And does your seventh tradition contribution to your home group really equal that? So I know that doesn't sound great for most people, but we all come to that reckoning someday. What are your thoughts on 50-50 raffles and intergroups holding raffles at alkathons or soliciting prizes for their golf tournaments? God. All right, let's go down the list here as best I can. Number one, if all you're doing is raffling off AA literature, good for you. Have at it. If all you're doing is raffling off Grapevine subscriptions, that's awesome. I've seen some conventions and conferences now that are going away from speaker gifts and instead giving a subscription to the Grapevine, which I think is awesome. Now, if you're funding your AA event with a 50-50 raffle, if you read the AA guidelines on conventions and conferences, it really doesn't go together with the seventh tradition. Like if someone like me can buy like $20 worth of raffles, you could have made my registration $2 or $3 more. Like that's how we remain self-supporting. Now, two other things about raffles that cause trouble in AA. Number one, let's go back to we're not above the law. In most states, counties, and cities, you need a permit or a license to hold a cash raffle. That's just the law in a lot of places, depending upon the amount of money that's going to be in that 50-50. The other thing is these kind of silent auction type raffles. First of all, even if they're coming from an AA member, that seems like a large gift to me, talked about in the long form and in the AA group pamphlet. Like if someone owns a TV store, they don't get to give a TV to say raffle this off. That's a large contribution. It's so funny. We will do anything except put money in a basket or pay an adequate registration price. We'll buy the 50-50. We'll buy the silent auction for the 70-inch flat screen. We'll do all of that stuff, but we won't put money in the basket. It's really absolutely incredible. Because it's the easier way. And I would say that the traditions are not there to be easy. They're there to make it more difficult. And they're there to make it more difficult because we are difficult people. Because money, property, ego will run wild with it. Now, I saw a question that comes in a lot, which is, what about somebody who might have a problem with gambling? Well, I would tell you that's an outside issue. And I'm not being harsh on the compulsive gamblers. But that would be like us going to an event and somebody couldn't serve alcohol. Like I'm aware of what it says in the Gamblers Anonymous literature. Okay. Are we going to stop serving sugar in our cake out of respect to people from OA or Food Anonymous or that? I mean, I could go down the line. What we could best do is get rid of raffles and just, be self-supporting. But sometimes that sounds harsh and people don't want to. It's just easier. Let's see. What is your opinion on districts sponsoring GSR to go to the General Service Assembly? I already answered this earlier. It's not self-supporting at all. That group is not self-supporting. Is your district going to start paying the rent of groups? I don't think so. In a local obituary, in the words, in lieu of flowers, donations can be sent to the local intergroup office, who now claims contributions are up due to this. Setting aside donations versus contributions. Would this be valid, as the intergroup would not be necessarily? Nope, it is totally not valid. Totally goes against every tradition, especially the seventh. If AA members want to send a contribution in memory of a member who passed away, great. But an intergroup or a district taking money from outside people, not okay. I've seen this too. It's just a lack of understanding of the traditions. You know what it should say? Find a local clubhouse. In lieu of flowers, Send a donation to the local clubhouse. They're not AA. They help AA. AA meets there. But intergroups, and this other thing about would not necessarily be an AA group, we got to get rid of this attachment to the words Alcoholics Anonymous, that there's some official brand. I hate to tell you this, there's no such thing as an official AA group. There's no good housekeeping seal of approval. There's that number you get from GSO. The only thing it means is you say you're an AA group. And because you say you are, we want to communicate with you. It does not mean you have our official blessing. Let's see. A group in my district has been carrying the message into a 7-day detox. They have been giving $300 a month in big books. Now they're asking the district for money. Does it go against the 7 tradition to supply big books to a treatment facility? No, but you have to be wise and practical. And you got to make sure you're spending AA money wisely. Number one, how do you decide which facility you're giving books to? Are you fair and equitable? If you're giving books to a facility that gets paid 30 grand for each person there, you're really going down the wrong road and wasting AA's money. You know what's really much better? Creating a library for these places. Making up a stamp that says like provided by whatever in a group or district, whatever, and giving a place like that 30 big books so that they're there for the people to use. If somebody happens to take one, so be it. But you have to be very careful about how you're allotting that money. Now, if you're telling me there's a place where people go who have no money, who have nothing, and that place operates with hardly any funds, sure. But it should be a group conscience decision as to how you send books and where you send books. It should not be any individual's decision. So let's see. Any other questions on the 7th tradition? Oh, what are your thoughts when other people come from other groups saying they need support for their group, both physically and financially? I say we have too many groups. I say that if your group, there's a reason people aren't going to your group. Listen, I could speak for hours on the traditions, but at the end of the day, let's admit it. The ultimate vote on the traditions is with your feet. That's the ultimate vote. Are you going there or are you not going there? And if people aren't going there, why aren't they going there? Now, if you're saying make an announcement that a group just started, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're announcing you need other groups to support you, I'm not so sure about that, especially financially. Morally, why wouldn't we want to support every AA group out there? But financially, it just makes no sense. Let's see. What about clubs having a membership fee? That's great. It's awesome. You know why? Because they're not AA. If they have a monthly fee or an annual fee, whatever, it's none of our business. I'm a member at the clubhouse that my home group meets at. I've decided to be a member. That has nothing to do with me putting money in the AA group that I go to that meets there. I've just decided to financially support that building because it supplies a place for a lot of groups to meet. But that has nothing to do. I will tell you a couple of things that go wrong with clubs. When people make club announcements for membership inside an AA meeting as an AA related announcement, that's not an AA related announcement. Or if the club is putting too many things financially related in the meeting area, putting pressure on people to become group members, that's probably not okay either. But again, We try to be practical. I want to go to this concept 7 because I know we're behind a little. I'm going to read it. The conference first of all, we start off with like a urban myth, but the conference recognizes that the charter with a capital C and the bylaws of the General Service Board are legal instruments, that the trustees are hereby fully empowered to manage and conduct all the world service affairs of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is further understood that the conference charter itself is not a legal document, that it relies instead upon the force of tradition and the power of the AA purse for its final effectiveness. So let's get the confusing thing out of the way, the charter word. In the first sentence, it says the conference recognizes that the charter and the bylaws of the General Service Board are legal instruments. Then it says later, the conference charter itself is not a legal document. So we're talking about two different charters. The conference charter is a spiritual document, a spiritual handshake between the groups and the General Service Board of Trustees. Up here, the conference recognizes that the charter and the bylaws are actually in the service manual, the bylaws of the General Service Board. The charter of the General Service Board is an old word, which now we would call certificate of incorporation. That's what the charter is that they're talking about there. The certificate of incorporation to register the business with the state of New York to do business. What does it do? I will put the current certificate of incorporation into the private group this week. The last one was filed in like 2004 or 2005. But you can read our certificate of incorporation, tells it what we do. It says in the first paragraph, on one hand, we see a board of trustees which is invested with complete legal power over AA funds and services. While on the other hand, we find that AA's General Service Conference is clothed with such great traditional influence and financial power that if necessary, it could overcome the legal right of the board of trustees. It can therefore give the trustees directives and secure compliance with them, practically speaking. The legal side of our operation was created so that we could do business in the outside world. That's why we have 3 corporations, 3 nonprofit corporations. Each corporation has a couple of bank accounts. That's why we have an employee identification number, so that we can pay our employees and open up bank accounts. That's why we have workers' compensation insurance, because it's required by law. There's certain things we have to do to operate in the outside world. And this is where I may come in opposition to some current thinking. And if that is the case, so be it. I've already pled guilty. I was raised by the Jim Estells and the Gary Glens and the Elaine McDowells and the Art Knights and the Michael Alexanders. Michael Alexander was Bernard Smith's law clerk. That's his connection to AA. He later became a chair of the General Service Board. But I was raised to believe that the legal side of the AA structure was made to operate in the outside world, never to use it against the groups, never to use it against the conference. It says here, if someday the chips were really down, there would be little chance of the stalemate. The conference would find itself in complete control of the situation. As the conscience of AA, the delegates would find themselves in ultimate authority over our General Service Board and also its corporate arms of active world service, meaning AAWS and the Grapevine. Now, let me be very clear here. There would be very little reason ever for the conference to use its ultimate authority to give directives to the board. So forever, whoever, I'll joke around, whatever trustee was assigned to listen to my recording this week to report back to the rest of the trustees what I said on Monday night, I just want you to hear that loud and clear. There would be very little need ever for the conference to ever give directives to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees needs great freedom to carry out their legal responsibilities. I've been a member of that board for 4 years. I've been a member of the AAWS board for 8 years. I've been chair of the AAWS board twice and treasurer of the AAWS board once. We need to give our trusted servants the freedom to do their jobs. So I am not here advocating complete anarchy or any kind of hostile takeovers at all. But I am saying that the concepts are very clear, that the conference is the spiritual boss. That's our structure. Our legal structure is to do business in the world outside AA. That's why when I hear people say that if the conference ever wanted to censure the board, it would be punitive. No, it wouldn't be. First of all, it's a spiritual censure. How much power does that have, right? It's the conference as a body saying, hey, we don't like what you did. There's nothing personally punitive about it. We're not advertising it. We're not hanging it on posters. But it does say at the end of concept 7, and probably the one thing that I don't like in the concept I wish could be written better is it kind of compares the Board of Trustees veto over a conference action to a presidential veto. The reason I don't like that example is because there's no such thing as an individual veto in Alcoholics Anonymous. The chair of the General Service Board does not have veto authority. Scott spoke here a few weeks ago. He does not have veto authority. The whole board has veto authority. If the General Service Board voted 2/3 or more to not listen to the conference, that's kind of a group veto, very different than a presidential veto. But it talks about when should the board not listen to the conference. It says right at the end, 3 reasons. In a time of haste or heavy stress, the conference should take an action or issue a directive to the trustees in clear violation of its own charter or that of the General Service Board, or if the conference were to pass any measure so ill-considered or so reckless as to seriously injure, in the judgment of the trustees, AA's public relations or AA as a whole. Then the trustees can say, no, we're not doing this. It says, although traditionally the trustees should never substantially exceed a conference-approved budget without consulting the conference, they should feel entirely free to reduce the conference budget figure during any fiscal year, even though such an action might curtail or cancel special plans or projects initiated by the conference. And number 3, if by reason of unforeseen conditions, any particular plan, project, or directive of the conference should become impractical or unworkable during a fiscal year, the trustees should, without prejudice, be able to use their right of veto and cancellation. Now, what's the real history? 75th General Service Conference just ended. For 75 years, the trustees have listened to the conference. Now, the last one gives the trustees a lot of wiggle room, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It says if unforeseen conditions, but what they do is they don't veto it. If the conference tells the trustees to do something, if during the year in July and October at the board weekends, the trustees committee that's working on it realizes, wait a minute, this might not work, there's some unintended consequences, they bring a report back to the conference committee next year and they give an update and say, this is where we are. We haven't gone any further because we need your input. And I just want to stress a line going back to the spiritual versus the legal. It's on the bottom of page 22, and it says this: just as the conference should avoid the overuse of its traditional authority, which I've already talked about, so should the trustees avoid overuse of their legal rights. If we get in a situation with the conference and the delegates and the board where the board is constantly talking about their legal rights to the delegates, there's probably something going on that's not right. There's an imbalance. I hate to use Star Wars analogies, but there's an imbalance in the force. How much better could I say it, right? There's something going on. The same way, if the delegates are micromanaging the trustees, there's some kind of imbalance there that needs to be worked out. As I've said before, there's a pendulum that swings back and forth. Listen, I was a delegate. I went there 2 years as a delegate. You go for a week and you go home. And then you get to go home and say all the great work we did as delegates. And then I get to criticize the trustees for a year until the next conference because I don't like the way they're carrying out everything, right? But then I became a director and a trustee. And then I didn't get to go home and criticize. I got to, after the conference, come back to board weekends and AAWS meetings and get heavily criticized, which can get old and tiresome. But I believe what Concept 9 says. I warn everybody here. I warn every AA leader. Everyone knows that I say it all the time. You want to be a trustee? What quality do you need? What did I say? I always say it. If your daily peace of mind and serenity are dependent on you getting your own way, do not become a trustee. Do not become a director. You are setting yourself up for lots of pain. The other thing it says in Concept 9, just for those of you who are on your way down the triangle, here's the good news if no one gave it to you before. I know we're in Concept 7, but here's the good news in Concept 9 if you're going to be an AA leader. Here's what it tells you you have to look forward to. Who wouldn't want to do this? You will often be called upon to face heavy and sometimes long continued criticism. There are our constructive critics, our friends indeed. We ought never fail to give them a careful hearing. How about this? Then there are our destructive critics. They power drive, they politic, they make accusations. Maybe they're violent, malicious. They pitch gobs of rumor, gossip, and gentle scuttlebutt. Welcome to AA service, everyone. This is the prize. This is the prize you didn't know you get. But there's a big warning there. The warning is this. We're telling you this is going to happen. Are you able to take the high road, even though some people are going to act like this? That's the real challenge to be an AA leader. Knowing that these people gossip about you, knowing they start rumors about you, knowing they act badly, all this stuff. But if you want the fancy title, you take the high road. And that's not always easy. The balance of the legal and the spiritual is one of the most important things to understand regarding the concepts. And that's why I believe Concept 7 is between Concept 6 and 8, not the numbers. Obviously, 7 comes between 6 and 8, but the individual subjects. Concept 6 says the conference should make all the big decisions of large policy and finance. Concept 8 says the trustees should administer and manage, but not make the final decisions. Concept 7 is all about what decisions should be made by the conference and what decisions should be made by the board. And sometimes there's errors made on either side. But it's still the best structure I've seen out there. And I believe that it works. You know, I love that saying. Hold on so I don't mess it up because it's really a good one. It is, sometimes you hear that saying, history does not repeat itself or does repeat itself. Here's the truth. History doesn't repeat itself. AA members do. Okay. That's who repeats itself. The human element of Alcoholics Anonymous. The structure and the organization is perfect as is designed. The people who make it up, basically the most imperfect people the world has to offer, all gathered in one place in one organization, which makes things very challenging. So let me see the questions here. Is a censure necessary in AA? Well, here's my feeling. Nothing to do with whatever happened at last week's conference. Bill W. wrote the concepts with Bernard Smith. In 1961, the Literature Committee recommended that the conference approve the 12 concepts and the narratives, and they approved them. And then the conference approved it. So I believe there's only two ways to tell the board we don't like what they're doing officially. Censure, which is kind of like a warning, or withhold money, which is drastic, and that should really be done last possible thing for any group or person to do, to withhold money from the General Service Board. But I think I would be pretty arrogant if I said censure was not necessary. If it's in our structure and the group conscience from when AA was started. That would be like me coming on here tonight and saying, I know we're supposed to discuss Tradition 7, but I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I know I'm arrogant, but I am not that arrogant, okay? Like, I am self-aware of how arrogant I can be, but I am not going to come here and tell you we don't need the second step, the fourth step, the 11th step, or Traditions 4 or 8. Like, that just sounds crazy. Same with if I said there's no reason for censure. It's in our literature. It's in our concepts. If the General Service Conference voted to say we're not going to have censure anymore, then I would accept that group conscience. I've heard and agree with you, oh, thank you, that embracing the traditions rather than enforcement works. Is there a value in considering the words force of tradition in the 7th concept, albeit if that force may be in the nature of my dialogue and vocabulary? Maybe. I mean, we do have to pick our words carefully sometimes. You know, when it says tradition with a lower T, that means not one of the 12, but rather what we've always done. So you have to separate that when you read AA literature. If it has a capital T, it's referring to one of our 12 traditions. If it has a lower T, it's talking about something we've done over time, but not necessarily one of our traditions. Someone asked me about getting in the private Facebook group. I'm going to put email and number here. You can email, WhatsApp, whatever, text. to get in. Any other questions about concept 7? One funny two Al-Anon related things here. Lois W said traditions call for the obedience to the unenforceable true. Someone also wrote me a question about tradition 7 because Al-Anon decided to buy property. They asked, how come we don't own a building? Each 12-step fellowship, including our sister fellowship Al-Anon, gets to interpret the traditions as they see fit. Al-Anon does own property, and they do accept donations in memory of people from outside Al-Anon, one time only after death of a friend or a family member. We don't own property, and we don't accept in memorandum gifts from non-members. But they have their own group conscience. They have their own structure. We just don't do that. It's not for me to say what they do is wrong. I just hope AA never does it. So with that, I am going to close with the responsibility statement.